What was that lion cub called?
Ramesses, after the Egyptian pharaoh.
And what happened to Ramesses?
After a few months, we sent him to the Milwaukee Zoo, where he grew up and fathered a lot of babies.
Mm-hmm. So Ramesses lives on, and
he lived on.
Great. Okay. Do you ever? I mean, ironically, we started out, and Peter Matheson kicked us off by saying you're, a pretty tough character. And now you're turning out to be a bit sort of soft-centered. Are you ever accused of being sentimental? Because naming animals is not something. I mean, even Jane Goodall has come in for quite a lot of flack naming animals, and she has certainly, her tough, hard scientific credentials have been questioned. Have you ever felt sort of torn between the need to be completely dispassionate and objective and just wanting to kind of cuddle a lion?
Scientists cannot do decent work by being dispassionate and completely objective. You're asking the questions. So if you're asking questions, is this society aggressive? And you measure each time two animals fight, another scientist will say, is there cooperation in this society? And they only mainly note the cooperation. Hey, you end up with two societies of the same animal, depending who asks the question. And as far as naming animals and so forth, people had ridiculous notions half a century ago. I was criticized for giving names to gorillas and so forth. I was criticized for writing popular articles and books. I don't care what people say on this.
Did you care then?
No. I follow not other people's paths, I follow my own path.
Very impressive. Next, after your study of lions in Serengeti, you turned your attention to another iconic and charismatic animal, and much lesser known. So if we can have clip 7, please.
I mean, I suspect that George actually, what he did was to lie back and think, well, now, what other impossible creature can I possibly imagine that nobody else could get anywhere near? And he produced a number of them back, the giant panda.
In the 1980s, he and his wife, Kay, were the first Westerners invited by China to study the giant panda.
What we both love most is being in the field. It's absolutely thrilling to be alone in the wilderness, as if you're alone in the world. Probably with George, it's being able to do, without interruption, exactly what he wants to do. And he can be totally focused when he's in the field.
You know, it's pretty good to have a wife that's willing to live nearly 2 years in a tent, in the snow and rain, in a bamboo thicket.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Now, you've written several books, but in your book, I think it's one of your most recent books, A Naturalist and Other Beasts, you've written the following, which sort of made me stop and have a think. You say, wilderness is a state of mind, and though it is part of our past, it is doubtful that future generations will even miss it. They may grow apart from the wild, but they should be given the option of glimpsing the splendor that once was. Now, when I read that, I thought, gosh, I wonder if there was ever a clearer expression of what kind of we all seem to be doing. But can I ask you, is that what wildlife filmmakers should be doing? Is that what we're providing? Is this a service, a kind of, something, a document for people to look back on in years to come and say, yeah, that's what it was once like?
I think year after year, the filmmakers produce more beautiful films, which are historic documents. But in addition, I also think it needs wider distribution in the world where they're shot. How many people in these areas have television? They certainly don't have the internet. How do they have access to seeing the beauty of their own countryside? And the one thing I've learned is if you're going to have conservation, it is the local communities that have to do it. You can have all the laws in the world. If the local communities are not behind protecting their own environment, their own future, they're going to lose it. So one really has to focus on communities, and films can be very important in that. I've had to change my mindset over the years. I started out, okay, I get some scientific information. I tried to set up reserves. But there's 3 times as many people now. There's very little wilderness as such left. And so if you're going to save that, yes, you have to have core areas that are strictly protected, but then you have to work in the whole landscape. And that is often full of people. So you have to work with the people. Let's protect this area. Let us permit the tigers to wander down this forest corridor, and for you to permit it, we'll pay you this much. Governments, corporations have to put up the money. So it's become far more complex than when I started out.
But you think we, filmmakers, should be doing more to ensure that our programs get seen in those places where they were shot?
Absolutely. If you spend, let's say, $15 million to produce a gorgeous film, it wouldn't be very difficult to, from that footage, to produce a number of short films in the local language, which are shown locally and have a real impact. Because I know in America, if you talk about tiger conservation, yeah, everybody's for it, but it's in India, not my concern. And so all conservation ends up local. They want to know what's in it for them, what impact will it have on them. And these films, those beautiful films you make, if shown in little segments locally, can have a big impact.
Okay, thank you. Just to lighten things up a bit, what's your favorite bit of wilderness?
The trajectory of my research has often been up, or wide open plains. And so I seek mountains where I can stand on a ridge and walk among the clouds, or I like to go to wide open areas where I can see for 100 miles and know only one. In 2006, in the winter, with a group of Tibetans and Chinese, I took a trip across northern Tibet, cross country, 2 months. In 1,000 miles, we did not see a single person, but quite a bit of wildlife. So where else can you still find that in the world? Now that is really a gift to the spirit.
Wonderful. In fact, once again, you're being prescient here, because I have written here, you clearly love mountains. And I get the impression that, I mean, it's not just because I've read this book, but I definitely got the impression reading this and from getting to find out more about you that I think you've been, putting it too strongly to say that your imagination has been captured by one animal, perhaps more than any of the others that at least I'm aware of. So can we have I think this is clip 8, please.
The snow leopard represents the spirit of these mountains, the symbol of all the plants and animals in this area. I've been in many mountains from which the snow leopard is gone, deprived of its vital tension, deprived of its essential presence. The mountains seem empty. There's a tremendous sense of freedom, excitement, exhilaration to roam these mountains, to stand on a ridge without any sign of humankind as far as I can see to where the earth meets the sky, makes one feel like an old-fashioned explorer.
Outside, the storm passes. The blue twilight reveals a leopard. It's a large male who's known to frequent the valley. He's returning with all the graceful stealth of these great cats to feed on the previous ibex kill.
The snow leopard's whole life is devoted to remaining cryptic, to hide from people, to hide from its prey until the final rush and it can catch something. It moves slowly, deliberately, sinuously, so you barely realize that it is there. Like a plume of smoke, like a cloud shadow, it is there one minute and gone the next. And that is, to me at least, one experience that it is well worth thousands of miles of hiking in the mountains to see.
That was a snow leopard project I did in Mongolia.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it was on an earlier snow leopard project in the early 70s that Peter Matheson joined you, wasn't it? Where was that?
That was in northern Nepal. Mm-hmm. That was just looking. This was actually doing science, or trying to.
Let's have a look straight away at clip 9, please, which is the trip where Peter Matheson joined you and who actually appears in this clip.
George's next big cat study was the snow leopard. Its existence was little more than a rumor when he pursued it in the early 70s. It was an epic journey through the Himalayan peaks of Nepal and Pakistan, chronicled by the eminent travel writer Peter Matheson.
I tagged on to his expedition in Nepal. I think that was the greatest trip of my life. And of course, we both had an eye out for the snow leopard. A very rare and hard to see animal, and George had been one of the very few white people who had seen it. In fact, I think he's almost the first on record.